Hi, my name is Stuart Lynch, and in this video, I'd like to share with you how to create a multi-page playground that you can use to store and test your Swift code. I use a lot of these in my YouTube videos, and I'm often asked how to create them. So in this video, I'll show you, and along the way, I'll give you a small introduction to Markdown and how you can use it in your playground pages. Make note though, a multi-page playground is not to be confused with a playground book that you see when learning to code on your iPad. This is just a group of playground pages all bound into a single one. Before I get started, let me request that if you enjoy this video, please leave a comment below and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you ring the bell to be notified of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If this is something you want to learn, then keep watching. There is no starter playground for this video, but I have included some resources, so please use the link in the description below to download these resources, because if you're going to follow along, you'll need them. The first thing you'll need to do is to create a new playground. There is no option anymore on the Xcode welcome screen. In Xcode 13.2, there is a new option when you create a new project called Swift Playground App, but you don't want that. From the File menu, choose New Playground, and then choose Blank, then click on Next, and give your playground a name. I'm going to call mine Coding Tips. You now have a single page open, and if you expand the left sidebar, you'll see that the page has a Sources and a Resources folder. I'm going to create 2 more pages. This time, however, I choose File New, but select Playground Page. And when I do this, it gets created above the first one, and it's titled Untitled Page 2, and your first one has now been renamed Untitled Page. Let's create another one. I also see some funny code at the top of this new page, but we'll get to that shortly. Let's rename our pages. That first one that's now called Untitled Page, I'll call Introduction. I'll call the second page Control Loops. And the third, I'll call Conditionals. Now, I'm not going to do any real coding examples per se. I'm just going to set up a scenario that I might use when I want to have a number of examples that I can refer to. So let's drag and drop to organize them like this. First, introduction, followed by control loops, and then conditionals. I like to use the introduction page as a place where I can provide some context for the entire set of pages and act as a table of contents. I'm going to use this page to introduce you to some markup tags. If you don't know what markup is, I recommend that you visit the source where it all started. And that's the commonmark.org page. Markdown is a specific markup library, and people often interchange these two terms. Here we see that it's a plain text format for writing structured documents based on formatting conventions from email and Usenet. It was developed by John Gruber in collaboration with Aaron Schwartz. If you're a Swift developer, you might have heard of John Gruber of Daring Fireball fame. You'll find all sorts of relevant coding and Mac information from John. Anyway, there is a link on that original site to help you learn Markdown in 60 seconds, along with a corresponding tutorial. I'll be covering all of the basics here in the next few minutes myself. Creating markup in a playground is like adding a comment. You start with // but also add a colon followed by your markup text. Let's remove all of that's here right now and start a new line with this and follow it with a hashtag space introduction. Big deal, you say, nothing has changed. Well, from the editor menu, choose Show Rendered Markup. And you'll see your first line of markup is displayed. It's the large title. We're going to be doing this a lot. So I recommend that you create a key binding to toggle back and forth. So go to Xcode Preferences, select Key Binding, and search for Markup. I'm going to choose Command Option period. Now returning to Xcode, I can quickly toggle between the two. So we have the large title. In a playground, you can get up to 3 levels of titles by adding that number of hashtags. Here's the second one. And the third one changes the color of the text. Let's set it back to 1. Without any tags, we get the body format. I want to have multiple lines of markup, so I'm going to change this from // to /*, and then press return, and then after enter /: to close off this block. Now anything in between these two tags will be rendered as markup. After the first title, then, we can create an introduction to the page. So I'm going to write something like this. If I preview this now, you'll see that that line break has been ignored. If you want to force a line break, you can either end your line with 2 spaces, like this, or you can simply use a \, and I like to use it as it's more visible. You can also stylize your text within a block by using tags for italics or emphasize text, or bold or strong text. To emphasize text, you surround it with a single asterisk or an underscore. So let's do that with the word examples. To make text bold or strong, you surround it with 2 asterisks. So let's do that around the word Swift. We can combine both of those by either using 3 asterisks to surround a word or 2 asterisks and an underscore. So I'm going to surround more examples with that tag. We can also create lists, either ordered or unordered lists. So let's enter table of contents, control loops, and conditionals. If I preview this then in Markup, I see that they all run together. Remember, those line breaks haven't been adhered to. But let's just make that first one, the table of contents, a heading 3. Great, that forced a line break. And then I'm going to number each one of the lines below with a number followed by a period. Now when I view them, I see an ordered list. I didn't have to add that \/ to create the line breaks. If I want to change the ordered list to an unordered list, I'll simply replace the numbers with either an asterisk or a dash, or I can mix them up. We can create links on our pages too. Prior to the table of contents, I'm going to enter this text. Visit Stuart Lynch's website. His email is slynch@createxsol.com. We can turn website into a link by surrounding it with square brackets, following that with parentheses that includes the string representation of the URL, like this. Now when I preview the markup, it's an active link that when I tap on, my browser opens and takes me to that website. To turn an email address into a mail to link, we can simply surround it with angle brackets, like this. Now when I render the markup and tap on the link, it opens my default mail client and creates a new message to that person. Now, resources are things that you can upload to your app's bundle and use in your application, like images and videos. In a playground, the equivalent to a bundle is the resources folder. And each page has a resource folder along with the entire playground that has one. Resources added to the last one, the playground's resources, are available to all pages. Whereas if you add them to a page's resources folder, they're only available to that page. Now, since we're only going to be using images and videos on this introductory page, I'm going to add resources here. Now, in the resources folder that's part of the starter set that you would have downloaded, there are 4 things: 2 images and an MP4 along with a Swift file. I'm going to drag the 3 resources into the introductory page's resources folder. After the links to the website and email, I'm going to create a new link in the same way that we created the link for the website. And that's square brackets followed by parentheses. However, I'll preface it with an exclamation mark. Within the square brackets, I'll enter a caption for our image, which in our case can be Createch logo. Now, the caption will only be displayed if the image is not found, but it's good for accessibility purposes and, as you'll see in a second, for hovering. Within the parentheses, you enter the name of the image. So let's copy it to make sure that we don't have any typos. When I render this markup, I see the image, but I forgot to add a new line. So let's do that, otherwise it gets displayed inline. Notice when you hover over the image, you see that caption text. Now, below the table of contents, I want to display a video. So I'm going to create a new link in the same way that I did for the image. For the caption, I'll just type in promo video, and the link is that video that I've uploaded, the promo.mp4. When I render the markup, I can see that I have that play image in the center of the screen, and when clicked, it displays the video. I'm not sure why the video jumps to the side and then to the center when I click on it again. It must be an Xcode bug. We can improve this display though, because we're not seeing what this video is all about. Within the parentheses, we can specify a poster image and its dimensions, and I have that uploaded to our resources folder. So after the name of the video, we'll hit a space and then type in poster equals, followed by, within quotes, the name of our poster image, with a space followed by width equals the width in quote, another space, and height, followed by equals, and within quotes, the height. Make sure that you don't have any spaces between the equals and the following strings. Now when I render the markup, I see that poster image, and it's much better. I also want to turn the list here in our table of contents into links to our next pages. So we can do this by surrounding the text like we did for the URL, and then provide the page name in the brackets for the link. So let's do that. When we view this, the second one looks good, but not the first one. And this is because we can't have any spaces within a link. We need to encode our URL link to the page using URL encoding. And a space can be represented by %20. So let's do that here. When I render it again, I see that they are both active links. And when I click on a link, I get taken to that page. And there's already some navigation buttons on those pages, and a previous button will take us back to the introduction page. We'll learn more about these soon. But before I move on to the next section, we can also use another markup that is known as a block quote. In Xcode Playgrounds, this adds additional functionality. And you do this by prefacing each line with a right angle bracket or a greater than. So before the links in my website and email address, we can use this markup to make sure that our viewers render the page as markup and reveal the sidebar. So each line has to be prefaced with that greater than symbol. And I want to make sure I add a line break at the end of that first line. And now when we render the markup, we see that the text stands out and the word note is entered at the top of the text, and there is a vertical bar along the left-hand side. Let's move on then to the second page for control loops. Let's exit out of the rendered markup mode, and we'll see that there are two single lines of markup using the special navigation tags. I'd like to switch this up a bit and instead start my page with a multi-line markup block with a previous tag. I'm going to add a less than in front of previous to indicate a back arrow. And then I'm going to enter about 20 spaces and then create a link back to the introduction page. Then I'll add another 20 spaces and just copy and paste the code for the next, adding a greater than for the direction. After the navigation bar, I'll press return and create a level 2 title that I'll call control loops, and follow that with a line that says what the page is all about. This title is what I'm going to do a lot for my pages, so I'm going to create a code snippet for it. So all I have to do is highlight the text, and then from the editor menu choose Create Code Snippet. The copy text will already be entered into the code window, so I can give it a name like Playground Page Title. And then I'm going to enter something for the completion like PPT. And to make it even easier for all of the fixed text, I'm going to change the fixed text to placeholders by surrounding the placeholder word that I'm going to use with an angle bracket hashtag. When I'm done, I can click Done. Now I can navigate to the conditionals page, and I'll replace the markup on that first line using the snippet, and just replace the placeholder text with real text that'll describe what this page is all about. Now, since there is no next page, I can remove that last navigation link. This is almost all there is to it. But I do want to show you another bit of markup and show you how to use the sources folder. Let's add to this page now by showing you how to use a few more markup tags. We can also remove that next tag at the bottom if we like. After the import of Foundation on the control loops page, we'll replace the next line of code with more markup. Remember how to set that up? Let's do that. And then within that markup block, we'll add a new block quote for code looping examples. Well, this looks okay, but I wish I could change that word note. It turns out that you can't with this syntax. But there is another thing that we can try, however. Instead of using block quote, we'll try -note : followed by the code looping examples. This gives us exactly the same thing. So what if we tried another word instead of note? How about example? Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's a different color, but it looks pretty good. But it turns out that I was lucky choosing that keyword example. Not every word works. For example, let me try warning. No, that just renders it as a bullet. The keywords that we can use are note, example, important, and one that I haven't shown you, experiment. I'll let you try that. Each one provides a different colored block bar. There is one more special one though, and it's called callout. But with it, you need to also provide your own custom keyword in parentheses that follow it. So we can do that. We can call this callout, and then within the parentheses use warning. And when we render this, we see that it's green with a green sidebar. So we could have used it. You just don't have any control over the colors. Let's change that now, instead of warning, to looping through arrays. And then for the description, we're going to say, show 3 more ways to loop through the integers from 1 through 10, printing even numbers. Now, before we end our instructions, let's go over one more thing, and that's code blocks. If you surround text with just single backticks, it'll display the text as monospaced font, and it's used primarily for inline code representation. More often than not, though, I want a code block. So the way you do that is you surround your lines of code with 3 backticks. So here's an example. For num in 1 through the close range of 10, if num%2 is equal to 0, meaning divisible by 2 gives me no remainder, I'll print the num. That's an example of looping through 1 through 10, giving even numbers. If I render this now, I can see that it's also added the word example in front of my code block. That's pretty good. We've finished with the instructions, so let's separate our instructions with the horizontal line. And I can do that with 3 dashes. I'm done now with my markup. So let's get into the rendered markup. And I'm going to show you how I can prompting our users or myself just entering code examples. The sources folder for the page or the playground can contain additional Swift source files that your playgrounds can easily access. Putting extra supporting.swift files into the sources folder makes it easy to keep your playground clean and readable. This allows curriculum and sample code authors to create even more interactive and exciting playgrounds while the visible code remains approachable for the reader. The caveat is that they are as if they are in separate modules. So for the content to be accessible to the page or the entire playground, depending on where you upload them, they must have public accessibility, as by default the accessibility is internal to that folder only. In many of my playgrounds, I like to isolate code even within a single page, so I have a function that encapsulates the code in a closure. And I borrowed this technique from Ray Wenderlich's tutorials where they use it in some of their playgrounds. So you'll find a file called exampleclosure.swift within the resources provided for this video. If you upload this file to the sources folder for the control loops page, it will only be available to that page. However, if I upload it to the sources folder for the entire set of pages, then this will be available to all the pages within this playground. So if you look at this code, notice how I've made the function public. So following the instructions then back on our page, I can use this closure to practice creating this loop in 3 more different ways. The function's called code that has 2 arguments, one for the name. So for example, I can use example1, and then I'll hit enter to get the trailing closure where I'm going to be entering my code. I'll just copy and paste this 2 more times, updating the title to represent different examples. As we are no longer within a markup block, we can simply type within the closure. So let me quickly enter 3 different versions. Now when I run the playground, all 3 closures get executed and my results are cleanly displayed in the console so I know what output corresponds to which example. Well, that's about it. I'm going to leave that 3rd page as is because I've shown you all I know for now. I hope that you see by creating your own Swift multi-page playgrounds, you can create valuable resources for yourself, for future reference, or for sharing with others. And just a reminder, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.